Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Let's talk about Venus in Virgo and a little bit about Mercury retrograde as well. The interesting thing is that Venus in Virgo is in Mercury's sign, and Mercury retrograde in Libra is in Venus's sign. So there's just a very interesting exchange there, although they don't have an aspect because they are adjacent to each other, those signs, Virgo and Libra. But what's going to happen through the rest of the month is that because Mercury is going retrograde in Libra, it goes right back into Virgo, and by it's later in the month, what happens is Mercury and Venus actually form a conjunction in Virgo. So I think that's an interesting point to consider, because whilst they are in adjacent signs but yet in each other's signs, they will meet up because of Mercury's retrograde journey and form that conjunction, which I think speaks to very much about what it means for us to experience this journey of Venus in Virgo, which is just there for a few weeks. It's not a long transit. And the fact that they are going to come together, they are uniting, so they will be speaking to each other very, very closely. They'll have some things, well, Mercury will have some things to say, and Venus will have some matters to express as well, but there's a unification that will be occurring. And I think what's going to happen is, before they get to that point, because they are in each other's signs, there's already this exchange going on. And part of that process, because Mercury is retrograde, points to what we are reconsidering or reflecting on and what we are weighing up, because Mercury is in Libra, and there's a lot of weighing up. There's a lot of looking at many different situations from both sides. And sometimes, as I've said before, Mercury in Libra can struggle to make up its mind, as it were. On the other hand, it has tremendous mental clarity and scope to view both sides to a situation and have this objectivity and clarity. And it might be a case of going back and forth, back and forth. It might be communications you're having with somebody. It might just be certain things that you are contemplating and reflecting on and thinking about, and just jumping from one side to the other until eventually we come to some point where we can find the middle ground, as it were, right? Which is the balance of any situation. And because that is happening while, Mercury's in Libra and Venus is in Virgo, and we'll talk about Venus in Virgo in a moment, and because they will actually line up together in a conjunction not too far away, then this reflective process that Mercury retrograde in Libra is taking us through, it may very well be that when they do align together, we arrive at a situation where there's a new sense of information that we can proceed forward with, that we decide upon. There's a sense of unification, essentially, whereas at the moment they are, again, in each other's signs but adjacent to each other, so don't have an aspect. And there's a lot of reflecting going on because of the Mercury retrograde in Libra. And then Venus in Virgo herself, because Virgo is an earth sign and it is Mercury's sign, which corresponds to our own analytical inner processes relative to communication, information, data, analyzing a whole bunch of stuff internally. And Virgo takes us internally. It's an archetype that corresponds to the recognition, if you like, of what we further wish to or need to improve on within ourselves. The shadow component, which is the polarity axis of Virgo being Pisces, that some of the shadow themes that can come up, I suppose, are that we can, there's a tendency to be, you know, over analytical and over critical at times, right? And sometimes that serves a purpose, but Virgo can get very caught up in the path of not being good enough, not being perfect enough, and the truth of the matter is no one is perfect and nothing is perfect, right? And that's virtually why we are here. We are here to continuously grow and evolve, and the Virgo archetype just highlights those sorts of themes, you know, within us, in internally and externally as well. So let me just bring up some visuals for us and just bring up just the transits for the moment. So there's Venus in Virgo. She's already at 13 degrees of Virgo. I was kind of thinking whether I would come on and do this, and it's not really too late because we've still got a couple of weeks of Venus in Virgo. It started on the 5th of September, so we're about halfway through it at the moment. And there's Mercury in Libra retrograde, and a lot of people have already said to me that they're experiencing this Mercury retrograde in quite a challenging way and quite a significant way. And I suppose the first things that we each individually need to always look at is, well, where is the Mercury retrograde happening relative to our own birth chart? What house is it moving through? And the same goes with Venus. Where is Venus moving through at the moment? The other thing about, well, actually, just on Mercury, I was also thinking today that, for instance, my Mercury is in the sign of Aries and it is retrograde. So retrograde, when planets go retrograde, I feel very at home, as it were. I've got quite a few planets retrograde in my own chart. So the retrograde process is something that I feel quite at ease with. I actually really like it. But it is opposite my own Mercury because it's in the opposite sign, right? So it is an interesting process and journey that I'm going through at the moment relative to Mercury being opposite my own Mercury, and I'm having this really great sense of awareness of just my own position with how my mind works and how I communicate and how I share information, and the opposite to that with Mercury in Libra and it coming back to me, as it were, from my external communications and so forth, right? Just an interesting thing to think about from the point of view of if Mercury in Libra is opposite your own Mercury, for instance. I think that's an important thing to always kind of reflect on as well. Venus in Virgo is said to be in her fall in traditional astrology, in the concept of essential dignities and debilities. And whilst that's a really old system, and whilst the world has evolved and souls have evolved and so forth, I still think there is great value in, at the very least, considering what it means when a planet is in detrimental fall, exaltation, rulership, etc. Now, Venus in her fall, it sort of points to a lot of things, but essentially it's kind of saying that, you know, Venus is, well, she's not comfortable in Virgo, right? Virgo is a sign of work, you know, and Venus is the sign of the planet of enjoyment and pleasure. So you put Venus in a Mercury-ruled sign, in a sign where she's set to be in her fall, she cannot completely operate in her typical, true Venusian element, as it were. She will filter her energy through the archetype of Virgo. And again, you know, Venus is about pleasure, sensuality, sexuality, friendships, love, harmony, balance, peace, pleasures, the pleasures of life, what we love, how we receive and give love and so forth. And Virgo has such a it's an archetype that corresponds to deep analysis and adjustments that we come to understand and realize typically through situations that present as a crisis. Because when a crisis situation presents, it causes us to analyze and adjust and correct to our best capability, right? It's when there's no crisis, we're just kind of, just doing our thing, plodding along and just enjoying or moving along as we normally do. It's always when crisis shows up that opens the pathway or opens the door towards assessing, adjusting, analyzing, rethinking, and so forth, right, to correct a situation. And in the Chinese language, crisis means opportunity. So it's all it does come down to the perspective that we hold on things as well. Some crises that come in, are really severe and traumatic. I don't deny that for a moment. But even those sometimes can be turned around into something that gives us a pathway into opportunities that we were just not able to see before, not able to perceive, because there were things in the way, as it were, perhaps relative to our perception on things. And so the crisis comes in and creates, there are different scales, different measurements on the scales of crises. You can have small crises, and then you can have catastrophic crises, right? So it just depends where it is on that scale. But wherever it is, it does hold a doorway for us to step into a new pathway by either removing certain things, letting go of certain things, or correcting certain things. And Venus's journey in Virgo encapsulates that journey to some extent. And because of what Venus represents, it therefore, those aspects of analysis and correcting and adjusting and self-improvement, which is what Virgo is about, it will take place in the domain of what Venus holds, which is the principle of love, actually. But it is all those other things, friendship, sensuality, art, enjoyment, pleasures, and so forth. So Venus in Virgo is not the most comfortable position for Venus, is what I'm trying to say. And so we still have to try and get the best out of her through the archetype of Virgo, right? So, and the way to do that is to remember that she's a benefic, she's a benefic planet. We have malefic planets and we have benefic planets. The malefic planets are Mars and Saturn, and they are certainly malefic planets, and for very good reason, and they can be very difficult planetary energies to work with and to integrate and to negotiate when we are having very specific transits with them, for instance. And again, that'll be based on whether we are a day birth or a night birth. If you're a day birth, Mars is the more challenging planet for you. If you are a night birth, Saturn is the more challenging planet for you. That's an important point to remember whenever you are looking at Mars or Saturn transits in your chart, for instance. Venus is a benefic, just as Jupiter is a benefic. Benefic planets inherently bring no harm. And when they do bring their challenges, they don't have a malefic nature about them. But when the benefics are in detrimental fall, what it really means is that the way those two benefic planets, that is Venus and Jupiter, the way they would normally operate and the goods that they normally deliver is somewhat compromised through the sign that they are in, that is if they are debilitated in some way. So Venus is debilitated in Virgo because it is her fall position. Venus is exalted in Pisces. The opposite to exaltation is fall, right? Now, what is the opposite sign to Pisces? It's Virgo, hence why Venus is in fall in the archetype of Virgo. So we can think about Venus's journey in Virgo in a number of different ways. We can think about it from an evolutionary perspective, which would be asking us to have a really honest, deep look into our own self and where we may need to improve on ourselves. And let's face it, we all need to improve on ourselves in our journey, in our life path, in different ways at different times, right? No one is perfect, nothing is perfect. Nature is perfect, but we are a part of nature. But in any case, in our human form, the reason we are here is because we are learning and evolving and growing and developing. And Venus in Virgo shows us where we can do further work in the matters of, let's say, love, because Venus corresponds to love, in matters of our life that speak to where our life might need more balance, you know, whether that's in our diet, in our health, in our exercise regime, whether that's in our friendships, in our personal relationships, in how we relate to the world of money, cash flow, values, you know, all things Venus, right, are basically concentrated through the lens of Virgo, and it just gives us that opportunity to tweak and work on a few things, right? But it's, I mean, again, it's Venus is not about Virgo type things to a large extent, right? That's why she finds herself in a full position. And again, it just means that Venus will not give the full extent of her goods, if you like, because she's in a sign that doesn't naturally align with what she represents. But it sort of indicates that there may be, it's a little bit like you can work really hard on Venus matters when Venus is in Virgo, like your love life, your relationships, your friendships, your values, how you are dealing with the world of money and things like that. You can put in some strategies and methods and new ways of understanding things and relating to things, and that might give a lot of improvement in those areas. But then what lacks, what seems to be missing, is the element of Venus, which is well, because Venus is exalted in Pisces, which is the opposite to Virgo, then we need to remember to draw in the polarity Pisces, which is to be more forgiving, to be more compassionate, to be more empathetic. The opposite to that, which is Virgo, is to be critical, right? To be pessimistic, negative, judgmental, right? At worst, right? So, and you know, becoming very picky, and that's not good enough, and that's not good enough, and I'm not good enough, and you know, it just can become this self-loathing, negative space that we can sort of get dragged into this vortex if we're not careful, right? With the Venus in Virgo, it's like you're in a relationship and you know, your partner arranges this beautiful romantic dinner, you know, or night out somewhere on the town, whatever it may be, and the Venus in Virgo comes up and expresses in the way of, you know, I don't like that area, I don't like that restaurant, I didn't like that wine, you know, I didn't like this, I didn't like that. It's like the inability to just appreciate what's been offered, right? And instead just go into the zone of picking the faults and what's wrong with this picture, what's wrong with this setting, what's wrong with this whole thing. That's what Venus in Virgo can go into, just on that very basic, simple, psychological, mundane kind of level. There are deeper implications with Venus in Virgo that speak to our own purification and the divine goddess within. And also because Venus is preparing to go into the underworld, right, and completely disappear from view, very soon. And the reason that is happening is because when the Sun moves into Libra and then Venus moves into Libra, by the 22nd of October, we are going to have the evening star, the Libran evening star, which is the first time we have this ingress of a Libran Venus star after 150 years, right? So that Venus Libran, which I'm going to come back and possibly sit with Ariel and talk about this in great depth. But we are in that. The thing is, with this Venus in Virgo, we are traversing that pathway at the moment. We are entering that underworld of Venus's experience in the underworld. You know, when she goes into the underworld and disappears from view, as it were, and then does catch up with the Sun, kisses the Sun, creates that Cazimi conjunction, which becomes the Libran evening star. The evening star has characteristics that are less of the earthly matters, the earthly concerns. The retrograde cycle of Venus is the one that speaks to earthly matters. It's that warrior sort of Venus goddess archetype. And the direct motion of Sun-Venus conjunction, Cazimi conjunction, but it's a direct motion. It also means that Venus is the furthest away from the Earth, right? Her direct motion, the conjunction to the Sun, is on the opposite side. She's the furthest away from us, whereas when she's retrograde, she's closest to the Earth. That's why a retrograde cycle pertains to earthly matters, everything relative to the Earth, right? And from that real initiative, you know, action-packed space of dealing and working with earthly matters from the point of view of Venus retrograde. But when she is direct, which is what we are heading towards, the direct cycle, which is the evening star, it takes us into much deeper layers within that speak to, you could say, the what's the word I'm thinking? I've just forgotten the word, but it takes us into that part of our psyche, that part of our mind that connects to spiritual wisdom, to the stars, to the esoteric components of life. It connects us to those sorts of things. Our interest shifts towards that direction. There's far less activity, as it were, on the earth, right? Because it's an inward journey, which makes sense. That inward journey takes us into those infinite fields, if you like, when we think about cosmos, psyche, the stars, our own cosmological orientation to life and things like that. So this journey of Venus in Virgo is really starting that journey of the underworld, Venus going into the underworld and being reborn as an evening star. And it's a significant transition because we started this year, 2022, in January, with the Venus retrograde cycle in Capricorn. That was at about 18 degrees of Capricorn in January, right? And so we've been working with that Capricorn Venus star point retrograde cycle, you know, most of this year, let's say. And now we are, Venus is taking us in the opposite direction, evening star, underworld. And then if we go deeper into those layers and go into the story of Inanna, which is Venus, and the journeys that she goes through as she enters the underworld, and everything that happens in those spheres, as it were, which are symbolized by garments and pieces of jewelry and things of that nature that she removes from herself as she goes through each sphere. I should come back and talk about that that myth of Inanna, actually, specifically relating to Venus, just to give perhaps a bit more of an understanding of this underworld journey. But it's a story related to her and her sister, and the sister is like the dark figure, you know, it's the dark polarity, if you like, and there's husbands involved, and then there's death involved, and you know, there's a lot of things that go on in Venus's journey through to the underworld. But the symbolism of her removing garments and layers off is that journey of us going inside and perhaps seeing deeper layers of our own self. You know, when we remove things of ourself, of our physical body, we see our own nakedness, right? We see something very different to what we see when we are dressed, for instance. So it's a metaphor, and it's symbolic, and it corresponds to those deeper layers in our psyche. It's not just about physical things at all, really. That's just what symbolizes that journey of that process into the underworld. When we go into the underworld, we are going through a metamorphosis, a cleansing, a purifying of all Venus things related to ourself and our life and our journey, really. And that metamorphosis, purification and cleansing that's occurring with Venus into the underworld is a very deep, deep, deep reflective journey of Venus's journey through the underworld, right? And it speaks to the matters of self-worth, self-love, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to others, which is all connected to Venus. Venus corresponds to our relationship to ourself and how we relate to the world around us and people around us. So there's an internal relationship, and then there's external relationships. So there's a very deep purifying process of the deepest inner self-love that we hold for ourselves, or that we may need to hold more for ourselves relative to that process, you know, of self-love, which is Venus. And Venus rules Taurus and Libra, right? So in the Taurus part of Venus's rulership, that area, Taurus second house, is the house of values, isn't it? It's self-worth, self-love and things like that. That's the inner kind of reflective process of Venus in terms of how I relate to myself and how much I value my own self. And in Libra, she speaks to the journey and the learning and growth around relating to others, right? So when she's going through that underworld journey, she takes us through the reflective process of all these layers of Venus, right? And in Virgo, because Virgo is an archetype, it's feminine. That is, Virgo corresponds to being a feminine archetype. The feminine is always an inner journey, inwardly. It takes us within. It's also an earth sign. Whoa, that is some serious rain and no sun. And in Virgo, again, you know, taking us inwardly to clean things up, to purify. It's a little bit like Virgo and Pisces are two of the most complex archetypes in the zodiac, and Scorpio is right there with them. And they all correspond to something very deep, metamorphosizing, transforming relative to the ego. So in Virgo, there's this sense of ego denial. In Pisces, it's ego surrender. So where Venus was in Leo, which was not so long ago, the sign just before Virgo, that confidence and that radiance and that power and that exuberant energy and all of that completely winds back when we get to Virgo. I've used this analogy before, and it's a very simple analogy, but it's a great one just to describe a very distinctive difference between Leo and Virgo. Leo is where you went to a party last night and you just, had an absolute ball, had so much fun, got totally trashed, whatever you did, just were the life of the party, etc., etc. And then you wake up in the morning and everything looks very different in the morning, right? When you wake up and what you see around you is just the mess, right? The mess that was created after this party that just went on all night where you just, did whatever you did. And so when you wake up and you see the mess and then you start thinking about, oh crap, what did I do last night? And what is this mess around me? And okay, what a drag. Now I have to get up and clean all this shit, right? And tidy up. And it's that's Virgo. That's when Virgo kicks in. Virgo is that realization of clearing, purifying, cleansing, clearing the mess up and fixing things and putting it back in order again. So we can think about that with, Venus in Virgo, right? She takes us through that inward journey of that clearing that we may need to do, right? And so, as I said before at the beginning as well, Venus is going to catch up to Mercury. And when they come together, it'll be in the sign of Libra? The sign of Libra? No, sorry, Virgo. Yes, they'll be conjunct in Virgo. 27th of September is when they come together, right? So that's towards the end of the month. And again, like I was saying before, because they are in adjacent signs and in each other's signs, so there's a reception there, right? Mutual reception, actually. So they are talking to each other and they are giving each other a helping hand, if you like. Mutual receptions can be very powerful. It means that the two bodies that are in mutual reception are giving something to each other. They're helping each other out. And because Mercury is retrograde in Libra and we are shuffling a lot of things around and reconsidering a lot of things and weighing up a lot of things, matters, and because it's in Libra and Venus ruled, it will have to do with money and relationships, all things Venus, right? So we might just continue to go through this weighing things up and trying to decide which way is better, which pathway is the right pathway for me. What am I trying to balance out here? What's the fair and right thing to happen here for both parties? That's what Libra does. It considers both ends of the spectrum and it looks at everything and weighs it all up and attempts to bring it into an equal, balanced situation, right? So you may be going through something personal at the moment in that way yourself. And I think there is a lot of, often people say, when Mercury goes retrograde, you reflect on a lot of things, you think about a lot of things, and you might just sit back and not really make any decisions. That's not entirely true. There can be very, very direct and specific decisions made actually when Mercury is retrograde. Sometimes the decisions are made more so when Mercury is actually retrograde. But in any case, whether it is or whether it isn't, when Venus and Mercury come together in Virgo, something new will be born out of that conjunction that will be drawn from what Mercury in Libra has meant for you being in the retrograde journey and what Venus in Virgo has meant for you as well. So that's a positive thing, because it may just be that when the conjunction occurs, which is 27th of September, 26th for the Northern Hemisphere, you might just find that something completely brand new is born out of Mercurial Venusian matters for you. There's a unification. And also, I guess with a conjunction, the other thing with a conjunction is that it's a new beginning, right? It's a birthing process. So you can't see what the outcome is until those planets actually start moving away from each other, right? And the cycle sort of projects forward, right? The conjunction contains all possibilities. Often people think that a conjunction is starting something new and it's a new phase cycle, and it is those things, but it's also the possibility of numerous possibilities or numerous outcomes could occur, because the conjunction contains within it the 360 degrees. It's 0 degrees, right? It contains the whole 360 degree circle. So there are numerous outcomes or possibilities that could be born out of that. So it'd just be very interesting to see for those of you that are tracking this Mercury in Libra retrograde cycle and Venus in Virgo, just how much these two are connected to each other at the moment, and that they will form a conjunction in the sign of Virgo. And the process in our life relative to Venus matters, going through a very deep, inwardly reflective journey, right? And it could be like an alchemical journey, a shamanic journey. You know, you've got the very basic matters of Venus in Virgo, where you might be Virgonizing your life, as it were. I use that word, Virgonize, instead of organizing, right? Just a play on words, which I love that expression. You know, just at a very mundane external level, you might just be reorganizing, you know, certain matters around health, routine, exercise, you know, just the classic sort of Virgo type of matters. But on a deeper spiritual, shamanic, alchemical process, Venus in Virgo is the purification of the self, the self-love, and also the acceptance and recognition of not being perfect, and recognizing that from the lens of, well, this is what I can do to fix this, or this is how I can improve on that. If you do it that way, you get the benefit out of Venus in Virgo, right? If you do it in a way where it's just total criticism and judgment and guilt, and atonement for guilt, which is a typical thing for Venus in Virgo, the journey seems to be more counterproductive, because it keeps us sort of stuck in negative patterns of thoughts and behaviors that we don't actually improve on. We just stay at that point of, well, you know, this is crap, or I don't like this, or I don't like that about myself, and etc., etc. But if we can remind ourselves that, shit, you know, I'm not fucking perfect, and neither are you, and neither is anybody else. But I can actually be, you know, honest with myself and say, okay, well, here's what I'm willing to do with this situation, or with that situation, or with myself in this way. This is what I can do right now at this point in time of my life. And drawing in the polarity Pisces, which draws and brings in compassion and empathy and surrender and trust, right? Because Virgo is about control, wanting to control everything, the outcome of everything, which in truth, we cannot. And the Pisces polarity is the reminder of, hey, you know, sometimes you just need to just surrender and just let it go. Surrender it to the divine source creation, to all things, and trust that it will be taken care of. Now, some people find that language a bit airy-fairy and a bit like, oh, you know, how am I just let it go into what? Where is this divine consciousness? Where is it? Well, you are it. I am it. We all are. We're not going to find it by measuring it outside there, or up in the sky sitting behind a cloud. It's the reminder of spirit and divinity is who we are and is what we are, and we are just having this physical experience. in countless lifetimes in order to evolve and in order to experience everything on the spectrum. We all experience everything on the spectrum. So Venus in Virgo gives us a little window, a little reminder, hey, you're not perfect. Your partner's not perfect. The love you thought existed in this partnership ain't perfect either. But the source that you derive from, the source that you are, the infinite, immutable consciousness that you are, that is perfect. But it's not a mental understanding, it's not a mental connection. We will never find perfection through the mental faculty. The mental faculty, its job, left linear brain, Mercury, Gemini, Virgo, is to find actually what isn't perfect, to connect information, to bring things together in order to learn more, in order to develop more. We're never going to find this perfection through our left linear brain. But once we employ the intuitive faculty of our consciousness, right brain, Jupiter, Sagittarius, that's when we can start to explore that field of consciousness. And that's what we are. So no matter how flawed, how fractured, how broken we feel or have felt, or someone out there appears to be, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And Venus in Virgo can find the wrongs in everything. And the way to balance that out is through the polarity, Pisces. Bring in the compassion. Be kinder to yourself. Be kinder to somebody else. Kindness is a very special thing. It's a very beautiful thing. And it's a very powerful thing, because when you cultivate a space of kindness for your own heart and forgiveness, there's a sense of elation that comes through that. You feel lighter, your energy is raised, your vibration is raised. The opposite to that is to be hard, really hard on ourselves, hard on others, critical, judgmental, unforgiving, right? And that's like what the Buddhists say. It's a little bit like looking at somebody that you really hate, for instance, and wishing they were dead, right? It's a pretty severe example, but hey, perhaps everyone's thought that at one point with somebody they were really upset or angry with. I don't know, right? Just it's I don't think it's that uncommon. And so you're doing that, and so what you are doing. Oh, sorry, let me just go back to the actual quote. So holding on to resentment and anger and hatred, in other words, is a little bit like swallowing poison and expecting that other person to experience the consequences. It's not going to be them. So anger that we hold on to towards a situation or towards somebody else harms nobody but ourselves. That can be translated down to negative little attitudes and patterns that we have as well, Venus in Virgo. Then there's, other elements of Venus in Virgo that speak to the Virgin, the whore. We have that whole, which is a polarity, isn't it? It's the feminine energy archetype through stories, historical stories, and biblical and religious and spiritual stories that perhaps came more into play during the patriarchal times, where there was a perception that a woman is either the Virgin Mary type or she's the Magdalene type, right? And so there was this division in the psyche of all of us. There's this split that occurred, and this identification that was born out of that and created this perception of, well, a woman is a good woman when she's a virgin, when she, gets married and has children and looks after her husband and her children and blah, 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 blah. And the woman who is free, Magdalene, Lilith, who stands in her own sovereignty and autonomy and is not about committing to one person and one relationship, well, she becomes the whore, right? And she's demonized. So, these themes come up very strongly with Venus in Virgo. And one who's got Venus in Virgo natally, or some of these themes could be activated for some of us when Venus enters Virgo, depending on, what house it's in and how's that related to our own Venus. Venus in Virgo for me, for instance, will be opposite my Venus because my Venus is in Pisces. And so some of these themes could come up in my own consciousness, in my own field of experience in some kind of way. So they are just interesting themes to kind of consider with the ultimate realization of truth, and that is that no one is perfect, but in our infinite nature of immutable consciousness, this idea of perfection doesn't mean anything really. But in our human form, we are trying to be better, become better, show up more in our own life, show up a better version of ourselves, and those are all good things to cultivate and achieve, right? That's what we're doing. We're evolving, we're working on things, we're figuring things out, we don't have all the answers, we never will. We continue to explore and discover new things all the time, right? So if we can allow ourselves to step into the Venus in Virgo from that field, from that kind of understanding, we can experience the more beneficial sides of Venus in Virgo, because once again, Venus in Virgo is not in her optimal position, just on that very external mundane level. But I think for those that would be working more in shamanic processes and alchemical processes and the deep purification process of self-love, and because the field of love is what I would call perfect and pure, actually, but it is contaminated a great deal through this third dimension reality because of the amount of conditions that are projected on it. And the source of love, which is pure and perfect, doesn't have those conditions. It's not contaminated. It is our own perceptions and expectations and judgments and so forth that contaminates that field of love, that places the conditions on it. So perhaps Venus in Virgo can remind us of the purity, perfection, and beauty in our own inherent nature, which is not flawed at all. It's infinite and perfect and whole. It is through the physical where we discover and learn and identify perhaps what is flawed or what needs healing, or where I've experienced trauma, and how does that inform me to work more on myself, or to help others, because I have that understanding. I can be compassionate. Nothing happens for no reason. Nothing happens by chance or accident. It is all orchestrated by the soul's intention, every single bit of it. Sometimes that's difficult to accept and understand or believe, and it's not you don't come to that understanding by left linear mind. You come to it through a deep, intuitive, inner standing and understanding that's beyond the concepts and ideas and thoughts that we have in our mind. We have 70,000 thoughts fly through our mind every day. Where do they come from? Can you grab them? Can you hold them? Can you stop them? Can you redirect them? Not really. What we can do is find a space inside through deep practices of meditation, stillness, and so forth, where we observe. We can just be aware of those thoughts without latching onto them, without identifying them, right? But can we stop them from coming in? No. So just another thing to consider in terms of what our mind is consumed of on a daily basis. A thought comes in and we hook onto it, and then we dwell on it or mull it over or get obsessed with it or whatever it is. But is there any truth to that thought that came in? Is every thought that comes in truthful and necessary to pay attention to? Absolutely not. We're not even aware of most of the thoughts that come in, not on a conscious level, but our psyche is aware of them and processing them, and that usually happens when we are asleep in an altered state of consciousness. So I think I will leave it there. And I'll be back soon to talk about the Venus ingress star point and Mars going retrograde in Gemini, which happens next month, isn't it? Mars will go retrograde in Gemini. We've still got a couple of weeks left of Mercury retrograde. Quite a few things retrograde. We've got Chiron, Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, Vesta, Juno, Pluto, Mercury, Uranus. Lots of planets retrograde at the moment, which again just offers a field that we can step into, where we can find and identify what is truthful for us, what is authentic for us. That's what planets do when they go retrograde. They take us out of that external field, if you like, how from the point of view of when planets are direct, we are busy with the earth, the world matters, this, that, the other. We're engaged, we're active, we are, just very part of that consensus reality to an extent. And when planets go retrograde, they give us that chance to go within and seek and search the truth that resonates with ourselves, not from what's been told to us from out there. It's such a powerful opportunity every time planets go retrograde to figure it out inside ourselves. There's nothing more powerful than standing in our own truth and feeling a resonance with that, and feeling a sense of confidence with that, a sense of knowing, because that creates self-empowerment, it creates independence. Whereas when we are latched onto the apparent reality out there and what's been projected and directed and forced or whatever it may be, we're just part of these layers and these systems. We don't sort of hold our own position, as it were. And when we're talking about the process of individuation and evolution, which means becoming authentic and aligning with the soul's intentions and remaining true to that, then that process doesn't happen from the Saturn world. It doesn't happen from what the world tells you to do or be or see or think or feel. It comes from our own decision making, our own understanding. So planets retrograde, look at all these planets retrograde. They are all assisting us with these sorts of things. Certainly not everyone's going to be conscious of that or even integrating that, but that's what's there. That's what's there for those that are awake to it, right? And just to finish up, I had Mercury retrograde has already created a few crazy things. Just basic, simple things. I got locked out of everything on my computer, just everything, accounts, social media, whatever, you name it, just everything. Took me about 3 hours to put it all back together. Typical Mercury retrograde. Outside of that, I haven't really found it to be a problem. It's taken me through some really interesting mental reflections, and really seeing certain situations from both sides in a way that's a little bit foreign to me to an extent, because I don't have Mercury in Libra. So I'm really feeling this Mercury in Libra consciously, and I'm actually really liking it. It's great. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and journeys and experiences, and yeah, I'll be back soon to talk about further things. Oh, just before I go, I have made a few posts around the subject of Pluto in the 12th house, and I'm so overwhelmed by the amount of people who follow my work here anyway, that have responded with various comments, most of which pointing to, please do this video for us. We really need it. We really want it. And I'm putting it together in my head at the moment, and I'm really excited about bringing this material out, because it's not just about having read books and understanding the archetypes, having the intellectual or philosophical sort of understanding and orientation to astrology. I'm going to be drawing from my own experience, because I've had Pluto in my 12th house for the last 15 years. And I'm just at the tail end of that now. And I could write volumes of books about, and I'm not exaggerating, about Pluto in the 12th house. And I will be focusing on it from an evolutionary sense or lens, and also from an esoteric lens, because both are really very, very valid, important, and speak to, I think, what a lot of people will really relate to and resonate with. With the esoteric component, just very simply put, Pluto is the ruler of Pisces in esoteric astrology, which is Pluto in the 12th house, right? So we can immediately see there's just this just incredible connection and correlation with esoteric and evolutionary astrology about the undeniable power of Pluto in the 12th house. And there are so many levels to it, and there are so many different ways people can experience it. But anyway, I will be putting a video together for that. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the next days or even in the next couple of weeks, because I'm still processing the journey of its movement through my 12th house myself. I'm at the tail end of it, literally at the tail end of it, and I can feel, it's really hard to put into words, but I can just feel all these pathways and stories and journeys that have played out in my life that are have reached the end of the road, and it's saying goodbye to many things, situations, stories, experiences, pathways, and so forth. It's just, you know, the curtain is closing, and that part of what my life has been has come to an end. And it's quite overwhelming, because I know that now I'm almost ready to face just this complete brand new journey. And being an Aries, that that's Aries wants nothing more than a new experience, than a new journey. It's that's what Aries is. It's beginning things. It's a new journey, new chapter, new life, new pathway, new whatever. So I can feel this this energy, you know, bubbling, just preparing itself. It's incredible. I can't even put it into words, which is why I'm waiting a little bit more to try and bring that into bring it into sharing words, ideas, articulating it in a way that people can resonate and understand, right? So I'm drawing from my astrological experience of many years, and I'm drawing from my personal life experience, and there's a lot to consider around all of that. So anyway, I'm looking forward to sharing all that with you guys really soon, because I know there's heaps of you out there that either have Pluto in the 12th house natally, or who have had Pluto move through their 12th house, or who are just starting it, or who are halfway through it. There's quite a few variations. And if you have Pluto natally there, if you are about to start the journey, if you're halfway through it, if you're at the end of it, everything I'm going to share will be relatable to you. So I look forward to sharing that soon. And yeah, much love and star blessings. Bye for now.